What's up, everybody? I'm Alan Seslowsky, and thanks for tuning back into Roster Watch. Each week, this video will provide you with sneaky $0 pickups that you could add to your roster today that may be of great value to you down the road. The idea is to identify players that have a plausible path to be the high-priced free agent pickups the following weeks as we head into our fantasy playoffs. The bottom of your fantasy roster should always be used to cycle through high-upside players that you could speculate on and then easily cut to speculate on another player. As we head into Week 10, your waiver wire strategy should change slightly. You should cut those backup quarterbacks, backup tight ends, and even wide receivers that you're just sitting there waiting on. You should add to your roster all of the backup running backs that are one injury away from bringing you a fantasy championship possibly. Today, $0 bidding is going to focus on backup running backs. The first player I want to talk to you about is DeAndre Washington, the newly acquired running back on the Miami Dolphins, only 2% rostered. The 2020 NFL trade deadline was absent of any splashy trades. Though sharp fantasy football players did take notice that DeAndre Washington moved from Kansas City's depth chart over to Miami's running back room. The two teams exchanged a 6th and a 7th round pick as compensation. But let's not forget DeAndre Washington was one of those end-of-the-roster running backs that helped people win fantasy championships in 2019. Over the last month of the season, DeAndre Washington averaged over 16 PPR fantasy points. He walks into Miami at a very interesting time. Myles Gaskin, who's been the most productive running back in Miami year-to-date, is injured. Matt Breida has not been able to stay healthy enough to make starts. And Jordan Howard is nothing more than a single-digit touchdown-dependent desperation play. There is a plausible path for DeAndre Washington to get playing time this week and show that he's a more dynamic player than Myles Gaskin. Should that happen, and the newly invigorated offense with rookie quarterback Tua, we could be looking at DeAndre Washington as someone who helps you get to the fantasy championship in 2020. Go get DeAndre Washington, add him to the back of your roster, and let's see what happens. Let's talk about the Tennessee Titans backup running backs, Donta Foreman and Jeremy McNichols. Both are either 1 or 0% owned, so they're available in your league. Derrick Henry has been indestructible. He hasn't missed a game in over 4 years. And it's reasonable to ask yourself, does that mean that the streak will continue, or is his injury luck about to run out? Either way, it's a sharp fantasy football move to add one of these backup running backs to your roster just in case tragedy strikes. The same way you would buy insurance hoping to never use it, but if an accident happens, you're covered. Our preference is Donta Foreman. Foreman logged 5 carries for the second consecutive week, this time receiving a little bit more work than Jeremy McNichols. It's not entirely clear that Foreman has surpassed McNichols. However, as McNichols was on the field for about 30% of the offensive snaps and Foreman about 15% of snaps. It's also worth considering that rookie Darrington Evans is eligible to be activated from the IR and that he could return in Week 10 and he could be elevated to the backup running back. Either way, it's a situation to monitor, and just in case Derrick Henry goes down. Lastly, let's talk about a few obvious high upside handcuffs that are more than 30% rostered, but you should go take a look at and definitely add to your roster as we get into the stretch run. Let's start with Boston Scott, the running back on the Philadelphia Eagles. Currently 38% rostered, so there is a chance he is available in your league. The last month of 2019, Scott finished as a top 10 running back. Miles Sanders is close to returning this week, but should he have an injury down the stretch, Scott has a good chance to help you hold the line in your fantasy playoffs. And we should also talk about Alexander Mattison, the running back on the Minnesota Vikings, only 30% rostered. The big Madison reveal was supposed to happen in Week 6 when starter Dalvin Cook went out. Madison busted, but that could be explained away by game script. Lastly, Alexander Mattison should be rostered. Only 30% owned in most leagues. If he was dropped after his bust week in Week 6, pick him up, add him to the end of your roster. Should tragedy strike to the Minnesota Vikings, he could be a very viable starter for your fantasy football team. All right, Roster Watch Nation, that's it for today. Remember to like and subscribe to get notifications when we go live, and leave us a comment in the video. We will comment back. Until next time, goodbye.